So thanks again for everybody for joining. I'm Frank Yang. I'm a partner with ADL Ventures. So we want to welcome those of you that are here live, as well as offer follow-up support to anybody who's watching the recording and may want to reach out to us with follow-up questions. Joined here by my colleagues Nagara and Martin, and we're going to talk today about mastering the SBIR STTR application process. And so I think just as a little bit of context, I think for those of you that are working through the applications, you're seeing a lot of this firsthand. But the SBIR Phase I is often not only the first government funding that a company receives. I think in many cases it can be a pivotal and transformational moment for the company. Certainly as an entrepreneur myself, I've leveraged SBIR funding and used that to catalyze both government and corporate opportunities coming out of the Phase I and not only the Phase II. And so I know in the next week or so, you guys are going to be going through what seems like an intense and stressful Phase I process, but having gone through it before, wanted to offer you assurance and let you know that, hey, it's a very approachable and engaging and user-friendly process, and when we're here to make it a little bit less intimidating for you. And I think the great part about SBIR is that once you're through that process, the probabilities in Phase II increase significantly. So they're just a little bit under, in the case of some agencies, a little bit over 50-50 for cutting from Phase I to Phase II, and that all happens in less than a year. And so it may seem today like that's really far away, but you're really on the doorstep of doing something that's really, like I said, potentially transformational for your company, and could be a huge validator with both public and private sector stakeholders. So I'm going to hand it off to Maureen, and we'll be available at the end to answer questions as well.
I have been in SBIR field for about 10 years because my background is in public-private sector relations, currently supporting ADL on contract to support their initiatives and efforts as a power connector for DOE. So jumping right in, Frank gave us a great introduction to the whole topic of SBIR. The SBIR program, as it's known, is America's seed fund, and it is the largest source of non-dilutive funding for early stage R&D, and that's really important. To add on additionally to what the points Frank was making, once you've gotten into this program, it is an incredible validating notch on your belt as you go further through the process. But even if you've gotten through Phase I, for other sources of funding down the road once you're approaching commercialization. So we're going to talk about those things today. So you can go ahead, Nagara, and forward the slides. I'd like to take a step back for everybody and just make sure we all understand that the SBIR STTR program is actually a large program that goes across 12 federal agencies. They've all committed to supporting this fund, this seed fund, to initiate research and development across a wide range of technologies. So as you're looking at a funding opportunity, there may be something similar in another agency that you should make yourself aware of. So I think it's really valuable and powerful to take a step back and be aware that SBIR.gov is a great resource for you. There's tutorials, there's opportunities. Right now they have this road tour that goes out into the different parts of the country, and you can meet one-on-one. So there are these opportunities throughout the year where you can go and meet with folks and learn more about them, about the different agencies and funding opportunities. Let's go ahead, Nagara. You may or may not be aware, but $3.7 billion in competitive grant and contract awards were funded in the fiscal year 2019. It's a very powerful program. Over 5,000 awards are given on an average per year. And the government, this is something a lot of small businesses are wary about and unfamiliar with. It's an important precept of the program. The government does not take an equity stake, ever. They don't use your IP without your permission, unless what you have to get through the process, and they have to become a customer. So your IP is protected through the process. IP ownership is retained by the small business. Over $50 billion in funding has gone to small business since 1982. The SBIR program has played a catalytic role in many American innovation giants. And just as for some examples, Qualcomm, iRobot, Illumina, Symantec, those are big names, and they started with funding. And if you go across the different federal agencies, they all have their success stories that they like to share. So the funding areas range from advanced robotics, ag tech, AI, biomedical, cybersecurity, energy, which is what we're focused on today, and the various aspects of it, national security, sensors, space exploration. So it's a wide gamut of topics. And the goal, as I said, is to really replace, so much of the funding in the past that had been provided by companies for basic R&D and innovation has evaporated. And without this fund, many of the initial, great ideas and innovations just would have no way to get off the ground. So I want to also make sure everyone really understands the program. It is run by the SBA Office of Innovation and Investment and Technology, but it's called the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Program, and I'm going to explain both of those. That's the mechanism for engaging small tech companies in research and development to benefit the nation. And just to kind of give you perspective on where these funds go, the Department of Defense alone accounts for approximately 50% of all the federal SBIR STTR funds. So there was a study done that came out in 2018 and looked back over the program, and it is available, it's public record, and it's based on the results of analyzing the impact of 16,959 separate SBIR STTR Phase II applications, successful applications that were submitted, and the related economic outcomes, including sales to U.S. military, follow-on R&D contracts, etc. And over half of the DoD Phase II contracts, 58%, resulted in sales of new products and services based on the innovations developed under these contracts. So as you can see, it's a very powerful program, and if the other 50% might have been DoD, the other 50 was spread across the other federal agencies. Again, there are 12 federal agencies that participate in this program. Next. Here are a few other, important and powerful statistics to be aware of. 121 billion in total sales of new products and services. Here's a really critical one, $22 to 1 return on investment for DoD. And again, each of the federal agencies does these studies, does these impact studies. They have to report to Congress and, various hierarchies on how they participate. They're held accountable for their participation in the SBIR STTR program. So metrics like these are really critical. 28 billion in sales of new products to the U.S. military, 347 billion in total economic impact nationwide. So again, very powerful. And look at all the jobs it created. So, if you're ever wondering how to get additional support from your community or other support organizations, share some of this information with them. Next. So as I mentioned, SBIR is one program, STTR is the other, and it's important to know the differences. The SBIR program is highly competitive, 3-phase program that encourages domestic, U.S.-owned small businesses to engage in federal research and R&D. That has the potential for commercialization. I also mentioned before, 12 federal agencies participate in the program, and I gave the web link if you want to go get more detail. You can really dig in and go across all the different agencies. They have a fantastic www.sbir.gov is a fantastic website that SBA is heavily invested in, and really a powerful tool and platform for understanding the resources available and the various programs and types of funding. So through a competitive awards-based program, SBIR enables small businesses to explore their technological potential and provides the incentive to profit from its commercialization. Frank was mentioning earlier some of the benefits, and I like to keep reinforcing the rigor of this progress of this program and the process of participating may seem a burden at times. But the reality is that across the nation, this is a federal program. So no matter where you're located, you have to participate in the same way. And that's really helpful to investors. So once you get through phase 2 and you're looking at phase 3, or you're in phase 3 and you're ready for some funding, they know what you've been through. And it's not like state by state, it's a federal program. They know what you've been through. They know the difficulties. They know that you were held accountable at various benchmarks. And so they're more likely to invest in your company. And this is a proven fact. It's discussed at a lot of the venture capital conferences across the country. So it's a very helpful thing to be aware of. So we can go to the next slide. The STTR program is another program that expands federal funding opportunities. And the important part of this one is getting joint ventures, getting public-private sector organizations to work together. So an STTR program, for example, might be a small business partnering with a research facility, or a small business partnering with a university research program. This really plays a valuable role when you're being assessed in a funding opportunity. They want to see, how rigorous is the research behind what it is that you're proposing. And partnering is extremely valuable in this approach, because you can demonstrate, we have the research, we've partnered with these folks, and we're serious about this innovation, and we can demonstrate how and why. And then also potentially be talking about a potential first user or client. So collaborating with a research institution in phase 1 and phase 2 to have a better product outcome for phase 3. Go ahead, next. I just wanted you to have an understanding also of the difference between grants and contracts. There is some confusion in the field, and understanding the difference between, what a grant is and what a contract is really important. The grant programs are through NSF, DOE, which is the organization we're talking about today, USDA, DOC, and NIST. HHS, which includes NIH, does both. And then the other organizations, DOD, NASA, Department of Commerce, NOAA, DHS, DOT, EPA, and Department of Education tend to lean more towards contracts. And then this is from the fiscal year 2019 budget for SBIR. This gives you a sense of, the money that's out there and how it's broken up across the different programs. This information is also available on the www.sbir.gov website, and it's updated on a regular basis. Next. So why participate? What's in it for me? Again, Frank touched on some very important and valuable points, and I want to reinforce that. Going through this program, really, it is rigorous. There 33% of first-time applicants, and this varies a little bit from agency to agency, are not successful. And that's important because it's a standard of quality, which again reinforces then at the end of the line, the most meritorious awards, and therefore, outside funding is more interested. If anybody could get in the program, it would be more difficult to get that outside funding. So it's a very rigorous program. There are benchmarks. It's a competitive process. And again, it's treated as a vetting process really for potential investors monitoring the innovation. As a federal program with national standards across, and this is incorrect, there's 12 federal agencies, the SBIR STTR program serves as a national system of validation for new cutting edge technologies. So what does this mean for you? So let's dig in a little bit to, you can go ahead to the next slide. It's important to, if you're going to participate in the SBIR STTR program, you really have to plan ahead. You need to be aware of where to go for the information, and you need to be monitoring the solicitations. So again, on the program website, the SBIR.gov website, you can find this tool, and it is updated. This is September 12th, 2023, but it's updated with each fiscal year. And you can find certain agencies have a set rotation of dates when their solicitations go out, their funding opportunities go out. Others have ranges, and then you have to monitor that range of time. And then, it'll come out. Sometimes they'll release the topics early so that you have a sense of what they're interested in before the funding opportunity comes out. Keep in mind, all these agencies want you to be successful. They want you to participate in their program. They're being held accountable. They need engagement, and they want quality products at the end of the process. So, if you are interested in a particular topic, it behooves you to go into the website of the agency, scroll through. At the end of all these funding opportunities, there are always program officers, program managers, their names, because they're the ones that are literally writing these funding opportunities. They are available to talk to, but for a period of time, and then they're not available. So knowing, taking the time to go all the way to the funding opportunity and reading the fine print and get to the end, you will find this information. And then again, this is on the main SBIR.gov website, but it has links then to each of the federal agencies. Next. So DOE, we're here today to talk about that and support, and ADL Ventures is here to support you on your application in this process of the SBIR STTR program. So DOE offers more than 60 technical topics and 250 subtopics. I don't know if you were aware of that, but I wanted to make sure, again, it's important to understand context, spanning research areas that support the DOE mission in energy production, use, fundamental energy services and sciences, environmental management, and defense nuclear non-proliferation. And again, there's a link here. If you go to the DOE website and you Google SBIR programs in DOE, you will find this information. I also put sorry, Nagar, if you can go back one, in this slide deck, which I'm assuming will be available as a PDF to you, all the folks that are working with ADL. If you have any questions about this process, information is available. The email address is here, as Frank mentioned. And then the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is, again, the program officers like to make sure that they're available. And so they do have an email address and a phone number. However, in your case, if you're already working with a power connector, it's very helpful to start there first. Okay, go ahead. So there are 3 areas of funding: Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. I asked Nagara to go ahead and poll all of you to find out where you are, what stage you're in, and if this is your first time going after Phase 1 or your second. If you're in Phase 2, just wanted to get a feel for who's on the call so that we can make sure that we answer questions and provide more specific support for you. So the Phase 1 program awards $250K. Again, this varies slightly from federal agency to federal agency, but honestly, it's roughly across different agencies the same in terms of time, 6 to 12 months. Phase 2, 24 to 36 months. Awards vary slightly, but are usually right around this figure. And then Phase 3, commercialization, that's when you're looking at non-SBIR STTR funds, and you really need to have a product ready to go to scale and get some help with that, whether it's initiating the manufacturing phase or whatnot. In the Phase 1 phase, in beginning with Phase 1, registrations are critical. Knowing who your competitors are is absolutely essential. You need to prove that you're faster, stronger, going to save more money, all those things. That's what the government program office is looking for. When we were out in the field talking to potential applicants, they would get 15 minutes for an initial chat with us, and basically they had to demonstrate, how is their widget going to be save the government money, make things happen faster, solve a problem. in a better way is essentially what it was. Who are your research partners as well? Making sure that you're teaming. Federal agencies, really, program officers, applicant evaluation, they're looking to see who are you partnering with. So I like to encourage folks to really think about teaming. Look out there and find other research organizations that are working in the field or around the innovation that you're considering, and seek out a partner. For Phase I awardee eligible for Phase II awards, that's your goal and objective. Make sure that you've really strengthened your research, your R&D efforts that you initiated in Phase I, and have a clearer, concise, and strong commercialization plan. In Phase I, they're not looking for a step-by-step commercialization plan. You have to prove the technology. But Phase II, they will be looking for a stronger commercialization plan and a sense of who your first user would be, your first client. And then, of course, fast track, and that is common amongst federal agencies. A number of organizations really like the fast track program, and how to participate varies slightly from federal agency to federal agency. This description here is focused on the DOE experience, showing a demonstrated knowledge, experience, and/or capability, and having a coherent plan for the project over the duration of both Phase I and Phase II awards, with a clear path for understanding and benchmarking. And the team partners are key. A clearly outlined commercialization plan with first users, customers clearly identified, potential, and engaged where possible. Next. I like to help folks understand, again, the goal on the federal agency side is we want small businesses to get involved. So they've put a lot of effort into creating a pool of resources. For example, the ADL Ventures Power Connector is there as a resource to help you be more successful. So ADL has a variety of webinars available to help you, as well as office hours. SBIR.gov has a whole series of webinars that start from the very beginning and provide tutorials throughout every step of both SBIR and STTR application process. DOE is working on webinars. I don't know that they have some. Maybe Frank can speak to that. But they do have a variety of support mechanisms in place. For example, you can register as part of their SBIR partnering platform, and they have a DOE lab partnering service. And I believe the lab service has over 22, I think, different, let me put that correct here. They have quite a few labs available, and you can actually go to that link and look at the specific resources available with each of the lab partners, and they really strongly encourage you to look at that, the lab partnering program. The other thing that you can look at is there's other type of local SBIR incubator support centers offering grant writing, red team reviews, commercialization planning, and if depending on what state you're in, you can go to the SBIR.gov platform and type in your state, and then a whole list of organizations will pop up that you can look at and find that support SBIR, the SBIR STTR programs. Next. So best practices and avoiding pitfalls. As you're going through this process, it is very important to have a system process in place yourself, making sure that you can demonstrate that you're a U.S.-owned, domestically owned small business, and meeting that certification is critical. There is a requirement on the SBA website. You must register in the SBA company registry database and submit proof of registration with your application. And the agencies may request the SBIR applicant to submit a certification at the time of submission or offer. So being aware of that is important. Timing, as I mentioned here, is critical. If you can find the deadline of when the application is due and then back up from that. We often gave the advice when I was working with the NIH Small Business Office, if you could submit 1 month beforehand, where possible. I know with delays in government funding and whatnot, there might be some delays in getting your application in. But anytime you can do it a month in advance or aim for a month in advance, and maybe it's not quite that, but that you don't want to be waiting till the night before the deadline and then you go to submit and there's a computer error or something's down. So always aim for a month before it's due and then set your plan back up from that. Make sure you've got all your registrations. For some agencies, there's 5 registrations. Number 1 is SAM, and the SAM registration can be done for free. You do not have to pay someone to help you do that. You may, if you're doing an SBIR application with NIH or one of the HHS agencies, have to do a special certification for them. There's grants.gov, which you would need to be registered with, and that is a federal-wide grant portal. And then, as I mentioned previously, the SBA requires a certification in order for you to participate in the SBIR TTR program. So getting those certifications out of the way, and some of them take a while. So that's why I said, back up a month from the deadline and then look at each of those certifications, calculate in that time, because there's nothing worse than missing out on an opportunity because you missed a deadline for something like a certification or registration. The other thing I like to advise is please provide exactly what is requested and nothing more. Be clear and concise. So edit, edit, edit. If you're working with a grant writer who has past experience, they will tell you the same thing. The government, whatever one of these federal agencies, DOE, CEDO, WPTO, they want exactly what they're asking for and nothing more. So thinking that if you submit 10 pages over what's requested is going to help you, it's not. And Frank can probably speak to this a little bit more later in at the end of the presentation, but it's really critical. I can't tell you how many program officers I've talked to, and they're like, I sat down with the company, they came in for an appointment, we talked it through, I told them it had to be exactly this, and they didn't listen. And so we just eliminated it. So they are very critical about, if you don't, one way to cut the number of applicants and go for quality is if somebody doesn't follow the steps and do what they're told, well, they're the first ones out. So that leads me to the next point, and it's a very valuable one because the truth is that 33% roughly in that area, first-time applicants are not successful. And what I like to point out is that the federal agency, the reviewers will let you know, and some agencies will actually schedule an appointment with you or offer to schedule it. It's up to you to schedule the appointment, and they'll go over your application with you, and they'll let you know, we needed more information here, or this didn't make sense, or your budget doesn't make sense, just based on our understanding of what it's going to take in R&D to make this happen. So they will give you extremely valuable feedback. And what we often coached was pay attention to that feedback, schedule that follow-up appointment with the program officer, and listen and do it, and then reapply. And it strongly increases your odds. And then back to teaming. Again, teaming and having a research partner is absolutely essential to demonstrating that you do have the chops, you do have the research capability to provide whatever this innovation is that you're presenting. Next. Again, I want to reinforce timing is everything. Plan to have your application in 1 month before the deadline. All of the agencies provide you with information that can help you make these assessments, create the schedule. And it's important to know where to go to find this information. Again, you can go to the SBIR.gov website to find the more general one. This one, for example, was updated on January 22nd, 2024. You can also go to the specific agency and they will also be constantly monitoring and maintaining the deadlines and updates. Next. We talked about the registrations. Over the past few years, for those of you maybe who applied for an SBIR prior to 2018 and maybe haven't applied for one since, it's important to know that the new sam.gov site has combined, there were quite a few other sites that you had to go to find other bits of information, and they've streamlined that. They recognized it was extremely difficult for applicants. So we have a new improved sam.gov site that we can go to for all the information that we need. Next. Great. So again, I just wanted to go over when you're registering your company, make sure you've registered it on SBIR.gov. If you've not already done so, and you'll receive login credentials, you can submit a pre-submission inquiry through that portal as well. And then you'll need that login information to submit your phase one proposal, which I'm sure if you've been working with ADL Ventures and preparing for this, you know you need to have a business plan. You need to have a really tight executive summary, and that's your 11-second pitch. We really like to see that as a one-pager, frankly. You need to have your cost proposal, your technical proposal, and those are the essences. Those are the essential elements of your phase one application. I did want to talk a little bit about what happens after you submit your application, just so that you can understand that process a little bit. Once it goes in and the deadline has come and gone, in order for a small business to receive the SBIR or STTR funding, every application goes through this peer review process, and agencies use a rigorous system to ensure that only the most meritorious scientific proposals are funded. So they use two factors. It's meritorious as well as what is their budget. And most of them really want to spend their budget, because if they don't, they're going to lose it. So those are two important factors that create a cutoff line. And sometimes what happens is you've got some companies that are just below the line. Something happens with one of the companies that's above the line, and all of a sudden you get a call back that after all you've gotten bumped up. So that'll happen. Then most of the agencies on their website will provide you with a review and funding schedule, so that you can anticipate once you've received the grant, you can anticipate when those what the payment schedule is, and then you're going to be required most likely to be submitting a certain amount of data by a certain benchmark date to receive that funding. And they expect you to be keeping up with that. There'll be some general reminders maybe for first timers, but it's very important to pay attention to that schedule and participate as you're supposed to. Once the proposal is awarded, you'll be expected to conduct the research and to develop the technology the way that you proposed. So you can't come back and say, oh, well, we've found a new way to do something else and we want to use the money for that. No, you have to do it exactly how you said you were going to in your proposal and your application, because that's how they're going to create the benchmarks that you need to be meeting throughout the 1 year or 6 months or whatever the time frame for the funding is. You're going to be expected to provide period status reports, and you really want to be careful about requesting performance extensions or modifications, especially if you're first-time applicant, because past performance, and that kind of reflects on your reputation within the system. And your goal here is to have to build a reputation so that when you go for the phase 2 funding, you look just like the kind of company that they would definitely want to fund. And I think that's it for today. So I've tried to cover the whole process and again, give you a sense of the larger picture, the SBIR TTR program, that there are 12 federal agencies participating, that within DOE, there are 250 different topics, and there are all these amazing federal research labs available with their resources that can support your variety of innovative ideas. So with that, do we have any questions? And I think you need to put them in the chat, and then Nagara will read them out loud. Great. And some people I found aren't comfortable in this format submitting questions. Maybe they are it's too technical, or they don't necessarily want other competitors to know what they're working on. So feel free to send those questions directly to Frank or to Nagara, and they'll be able to either answer those questions themselves, or we can work together on answering them. But remember, ADL Ventures is a power connector, and they are hired by Department of Energy to support you and help you be successful applicants. So please take advantage of that resource. Frank, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I do. So first of all, appreciate those of you that have joined live. I know in the crunch time of these engagements, it's always hard to get people together and to really have a substantive discussion. But I want to share a couple lessons from sort of past engagement, including recently with the CETO FOA. I think that the parties that have come back to ourselves and other power connectors for support have definitely benefited from it. I think certainly there are groups that have done that once. Not only once, but 2 or 3 times within just a matter of days. So I think don't be shy to reach out. The other thing which is covered in the past from ADL's learning modules is that right now 8 days probably looks like a lot of time, and so sometimes there's a tendency to say, hey, I'm going to wait till there are 4 or 5 days left to really get going on certain things. I think anything that's a controllable input that doesn't require a lot of strategic thinking, it maybe doesn't require a support letter or some other third-party dependency, get that done now, because I think just the sheer volume of deliverables, like Maureen said, I think is a lot, especially for first-time applicant, and it's always a struggle, no matter how many times you've done these, to make sure that every number ties, every budget number across every piece of paperwork is the same. And like in theory, like it is the technical volume and certain parts of the technical volume that have the most heavy weighting, but just realize that any type of inconsistency or mistake in your application could be at minimum perceived as poor preparation, but at worst, certain aspects of that could actually be disqualifying. So even things as trivial as the fonts. And then, lastly, I think we emphasize in a lot of our prior power connector engagements and a lot of our learning modules, the idea of product market fit and sort of market acceptance and achieving that through stakeholder engagement. And so I think that's a really important thing to think about as you go through your commercialization plans, because I think out of all the things that Maureen talked about, my experience is the commercialization plan is actually the biggest differentiator at phase 1. I think all the companies that have taken the work to submit a 15-page proposal generally have a fairly interesting and valid technology, but some really don't have a lot of commercial experience. As Maureen noted, some of you on this call may be going through this for the first time and don't have a lot of commercial experience, but being able to show a plan and a roadmap to what you want to do rather than saying you've done it already because you haven't is really important, because that's what's going to motivate the DOE and as well as the independent reviewers that are looking at this to say, hey, this is something that needs more funding. And I think emphasizing the need rather than it's something that you want or could be nice to have, you should really write this proposal in a way where it's very clear why you need the DOE funding and what the impact should be. So I think those are some insights that will hopefully be useful to the group as you finish up your applications. Again, don't hesitate to come to us for additional support. We do have, it looks like, one question here that's coming in at the end. So this is on, could you please shed some light on how to determine what kind of cost pools you use for budgeting? So Jason, I assume you're talking about the indirect cost proposal. Hello?
He
Okay.
said yes with an exclamation.
Okay, great. So as I think as most of you have seen in the budget justification, the indirect costs is also broken out into more detail. So in addition to indirect, there's subcategories like fringe and SGA, and there may be a couple of other things. So in my experience, the easiest way to approach this is with what's called a single line indirect rate. I think for a lot of smaller companies, you may not have fringe benefits if you can't afford to give health benefits yet, or you only have one or no full-time employees, which was actually the size ADL was when it got its first proposal, and many other companies. I think for a variety of reasons, what SG&A or other costs you do have probably are not representative of what they're going to be when you're at scale. But I think so. I think the less detail you have to provide, really at this early stage, the better. And so hopefully a lot of you are on QuickBooks already, or some type of similar accounting platform that makes it very easy to calculate indirect costs. I think if you're not, we're happy to follow up on that offline. So actually the answer to that question, my suggestion would be to only use the general indirect cost pool and not break it down into any further detail.
Okay, any other questions? You're welcome, Jason. Okay, if there are no other questions, I strongly encourage you to take the few extra minutes to check out the SBIR.gov website and also look at the DOE website, particularly the link to the labs, because folks will say, well, I don't know where to go to find a research partner, and they're handing it to you on a silver platter. So take advantage of those resources and reach out to ADL Ventures if you have any questions. And with that, I think we're done for today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a